All right, well, hello everyone, and welcome to today's session of Welcome to Backup School. My name is Jasmine Chapman, and I am the Cloud Marketing Specialist here at Veeam, and I will be your moderator. So we have Jesse Roche, who is a Manager of Cloud Storage and Computing from ISG Technology, along with Tim Kraus, who is a Cloud Service Provider Account Executive at Veeam Software. All right, take it away, Jesse.
Thanks, Jasmine. Appreciate it. Thanks for everybody for joining today. I'll take a minute here, go over our agenda. First things we're going to talk about are ISG and Veeam. Just give you a little background in case you're not familiar with either one of our companies. Then we're going to jump into the importance of backup and make sure everybody, I'm assuming if you're joining this call, you probably understand that, but we'll dive into a little bit of it. The next piece is talking about the backup best practices, and specifically 3-2-1 backup best practices. We're going to follow that up with a few solutions that both ISG and Veeam offer to possibly help with your current backup situations. We're going to provide you with some resources and then a couple of promotions that Veeam is offering today, and then we're going to go into some Q&A. Again, also just as a reminder, if you guys have questions along the way, certainly enter them into the chat window and we will make sure and answer them at the end of this. So without further ado, talk a little bit about ISG. ISG is a Midwestern company. We've got about 8 offices throughout the Midwest, and we own and operate 3 SSAE SOC 2 audited data centers. So basically what that means is a fancy way of saying we go through a lot of auditing from our security and from our best practices around things like making sure our data centers have man traps and making sure that our change management processes are in line. So again, making sure that our customers' data is going to be safe. Now, the nice thing about ISG is we actually, as I mentioned, we are based out of the Midwest, but we have a national and international customer reach. So we work with customers in about 35 states throughout the U.S. and then also internationally as well. About 60% of our staff, we've got in between 175 and 200 employees at ISG, and about 60% of those are engineers in some way, shape, or form, everything from help desk engineers to architects to on-site engineers. So what that basically is representing is the fact that ISG is there from an engineering perspective, and we take that very seriously. Some of our partners include Cisco, VMware, HP, of course Veeam, also Microsoft. So again, we try to partner with the top providers in the various industries to make sure that we're able to provide the right resources for our clients. So that talks a little bit about high level about ISG, but what does ISG really do? So it's kind of multi-pronged here, and it's really a little bit of everything. So we do managed services, which includes everything from monitoring, alerting, and patching to things like backup and disaster recovery as a service, and along with managed services like Office 365. I mentioned our 3 Midwestern data centers. We host public and private clouds out of those. We work on hybrid clouds for our customers if they have on-premise and still need other public clouds. We do some disaster recovery pieces and also co-location. At the same time, we are what you would call a value-added reseller, meaning that we provide infrastructure for our clientele. So if they need new networking or a new SAN or compute, we're able to provide those pieces for them. And at the same time, we also provide the professional services around that. So whether that's the pre-sales type of consulting to designing those implementations for them to actually doing the implementations themselves and providing the day 2 support with our help desk teams. So one of the nice pieces about ISG, again, we're not just a cloud provider, we're not just an infrastructure provider. We provide a little bit of everything, which means it allows us to make sure that we have the best solution for our customers. With that being said, I'll turn it over to Tim, and he's going to talk a little bit about Veeam.
Thanks, Jesse. This is Tim Kraus with Veeam Software, and I'm representing the Veeam Cloud and Service Provider organization. So I take care of our service provider partners like ISG, who's one of our oldest and largest Veeam Cloud and Service Providers in the Midwest. And as you'll see here shortly, we have grown phenomenally, and ISG has grown with us. So on the screen you can see that since we started shipping software in 2007, we have grown dramatically to now 255,000 customers in 180 plus countries. We're actually adding 4,000 new customers a month right now, so we're experiencing phenomenal growth. We estimate that we're protecting almost 15 million VMs now with Veeam. And if you look at some of the industry numbers out there, that equates to about a 25% market share of the VMs that are out there are being protected by Veeam right now. So even though Veeam is very strong in the small to medium business space, now 50% of the global 2,000 companies are using Veeam and 74% of the Fortune 500. So Veeam has evolved and has those enterprise features and that are required by some of the largest companies in the world now. Veeam also has one of the industry's highest Net Promoter Score, and Net Promoter Score is a way to determine the customer satisfaction. Veeam has some of the happiest customers in the industry, and for example, when we come out with a new release of our software, like version 10 is coming out in a couple of months here, typically within the first 90 days, we get about 70% of our customers to upgrade to that new version because they're so confident that the new version is going to work and that they can rely on Veeam if they have any questions. Also, we're very proud that for the second year in a row, we've been named to the Leaders Quadrant in the Gartner Magic Quadrant. We've actually shifted up and to the right since last year. So Gartner has placed their confidence in Veeam as well. I want to talk a little bit about a product we have called Cloud Connect, and ISG is really, really good at this particular technology, and you're going to hear about some of their offerings around Cloud Connect. So in version 8 of our software, a couple of years ago, we introduced this concept of Cloud Connect Backup. And what this allows our Veeam customers to do is, if you have version 8 or higher, which virtually every one of our customers has version 8 or higher now, you have access to Cloud Connect Backup. And what that allows a customer to do is make a local backup and then send a copy of that backup into the ISG cloud for safekeeping. And again, Jesse's going to tell you more about what they do in that area. In version 9, a little over a year ago, we introduced Cloud Connect Replication. That takes it a step further and actually provides disaster recovery as a service. So instead of just making a copy of the backup and putting it into the cloud, we now actually replicate your entire VMware or Hyper-V environment into the ISG cloud, and then we allow for either a partial or a full failover in case there's a disaster at your premise. So this has been extremely popular and highly successful. It's part of our 3-2-1 rule, which we'll hear about shortly. Just a little bit more about Veeam. So we talk about the Veeam Availability Platform, and the components of that platform are the Veeam Availability Suite, and that's a combination of our Veeam backup and replication software and Veeam One, which is our reporting, monitoring, and capacity planning software. So together, that creates the Veeam Availability Suite, and that's the product that is at the basis of the ISG Veeam-powered services. They also utilize Veeam agents for Windows and Linux, so that product allows ISG to back up your physical servers or your servers that are in a cloud or your servers that are on a different hypervisor from VMware or Hyper-V. That's what the Veeam agent allows ISG to protect for you. We also have the Veeam Availability Orchestrator. This is a tool that allows you to plan your disaster recovery and plan for outages and how you would do a failover, either a partial or a full failover. It allows you to plan your DR testing. And then a fairly recent product is Veeam Backup for Microsoft Office 365. So this is an interesting concept where you would actually make a backup of your Office 365, including your Exchange Mail, your Outlook, your SharePoint, OneDrive, and you would make a copy of that and put a copy in the ISG cloud, either for compliance or archive purposes, or just for safekeeping to have your data offsite away from Microsoft. So whether it's a managed cloud, which is one of the services that ISG provides, a private cloud at your premise, or in the cloud with Microsoft like Office 365 or Azure or AWS. Veeam has tools and products that can protect your data in all of these areas. Some of the recent highlights at Veeam is the launch of our Veeam Availability Suite 9.5 Update 3. So that's our latest version. And as I mentioned, we will be launching version 10 towards the end of this year, maybe early 2018. We're super excited about version 10. It's going to include some features like object storage support, continuous data protection with a 15-second SLA, vCloud Director support. So we're really excited about version 10. It's just going to make our product even stronger. Similar to Gartner, Ovum Decision Matrix has named Veeam as a market leader in data availability and protection for the cloud. Pretty excited that two of the leading industry analysts have named us leaders, both Ovum and Gartner. And then also we announced our free cloud services program. This is a promotion that we're running that could actually provide up to $1,000 of free cloud services from ISG, and that's a combination of ISG and Veeam offering you that $1,000 if you start to use Cloud Connect or expand your Cloud Connect services. All right, so let's talk about the importance of backup. Peter Crow said there are two groups of people. Those who have already had a storage failure and those who will have one in the future. So storage does rely on spinning disk, power, weather, a lot of factors, and so it's probably not a matter of if but when you'll have a storage failure. And so that's one of the primary reasons why we need backups and disaster recovery. Here's the reasons why we need backup and why we need disaster recovery. The biggest root cause for data loss is uninterruptible power supply battery failures. The next is human error. So we've all heard of someone fat fingering and accidentally deleting a file. Oftentimes it's the CEO of the company and he needs that data back immediately. UPS capacity is exceeded is another big reason. And then more recently, cyber attacks like ransomware. I was just at a meeting where one of our customers was ransomed. So there was a cyber attack on their data. One of their primary applications was being held hostage for $100 per seat. It was 1,500 seats. And they were being told that they had to pay this ransom before the virus would be removed. And they were able to take their Veeam backup and go back in time to a point before the cyber attack, restore their environment, and then eliminate the virus. And they did not have to pay that ransom. So it saved that particular company thousands and thousands of dollars. And we've heard that story over and over again where Veeam customers or ISG customers who use, because ISG uses Veeam, has been able to save companies from ransomware attacks. And then most recently, this has been a rough hurricane season. I'm based south of Houston in Galveston, and of course Hurricane Harvey came through about a month ago, 50 inches of rain in Houston, the largest amount of rain in recorded weather history. And so data centers that we thought were impenetrable were actually flooded in Houston this past month. And so another reason why we need to have backups is for weather-related incidences like hurricanes. Okay, so let's talk about what the 3-2-1 backup best practice is. This is not necessarily a Veeam thing, but it's an industry standard best practice. And the idea is to have 3 copies of data, keep data on at least 2 types of storage media, and store 1 copy off-site. That's the 3-2-1 rule. And so we feel that it's very important that you don't keep your primary data and your backup data on the same storage array. Because if something would happen to that storage array, you would lose both your production data and your backup. So we highly suggest that you use a separate storage media for your primary backup and then send a copy off-site, whether you're replicating or backing up. So that's the 3-2-1 backup rule. And now I'm going to turn it back over to Jesse, who's going to talk about 3 solutions that ISG has using Veeam to help you meet that 3-2-1 rule.
Thanks, Tim. Appreciate it. So as Tim mentioned again, we kind of talked about in the agenda, we're going to go over 3 solutions that may be able to help you with your current backup, either problems or situation that you have today. The first one's going to be our managed cloud backup, and you'll notice a common theme here. They're all using Veeam Cloud Connect. The first one's a managed option. The second one is simply the Veeam Cloud Connect, and the third one is actually replication with Veeam Cloud Connect. So we'll go over those, and again, if you guys have any questions, certainly answer them into the chat window, and we'll make sure we get those answered for you at the end of the session. So the first one we're going to jump into is our managed cloud backup, and the reason I kind of jump into this one first is because it is more of our flagship as far as what customers, I guess, request most often from us. This actually came about from, we were previously a Cloud Connect provider, and a lot of our clients started reaching out saying, hey guys, this is great, but what we'd really like is someone to take backups off of our hands. So that's really what we're talking about here. This is a full solution that basically allows you to say, you know what, I don't want to deal with backups anymore. Either you have a backup person and they're busy working for the business trying to take care of other needs, or maybe you don't have a dedicated backup person, and so this is a way to have a lot of expertise basically taking care of making sure that your backups are working properly every day. So it's essentially a 3-pronged approach. The top part that we'll talk about here is the ISG local backup appliance. So as you look at the left side there where it says customer premises, you can see your environment, whether that's a VMware or Hyper-V environment there. So you've got your infrastructure. What ISG does is we come along and we took that little blue box, which it's not a blue box, of course, but it is a server that we'll provide that we spec appropriately for your needs. So there's actually 5 sizes. It says 3 on there, but there's 5. There's actually a small, medium, large, XL, and custom, and we start anywhere from 5.5 terabytes and go all the way up well beyond 100 terabytes. We work with clients of all different shapes and sizes, so we're able to meet the various needs that they have. We also provide that appliance in both a rack and tower form, and the reason that this appliance exists is because we want this to meet those 3-2-1 backup requirements, right? So as Tim just talked about, we want to make sure we have 3 copies of that data. So you've got your production there in that environment up above that shows your VMs, and then we're going to get you a local copy of that there, and it also allows us to perform most of the restores from that local appliance, right? Because you want to do that rather than pulling it down off of the internet, because it takes less time. I've also walked into many situations where you walk in and say, hey, we've got this great brand new SAN, and all of our production data is there, and when we start talking through where your backup data lives, it lives on that same production SAN. So what we want to avoid is making sure that we actually have 2 different types of media there. So whether it's another disk, tape, whatever it might be, we've got 2 separate types of media. So that way, if you lose your production SAN, you're not losing the production data plus the backup. So that's part of that best practices as well. So we provide the local backup appliance. The other piece of that is we also provide it because we want to make sure that we're owning the entire process for you. This started out where we had clients that wanted to provide their own backup appliance, but then they still had to manage renewals and things like that. So we take that completely off your plate and make sure that we're responsible for that appliance. The second piece, which is probably the most important, is the actual process management. So what ISG does is we actually provide the Veeam licensing, but in addition to that, we're actually obviously doing all the setup of this, but we do the daily backup monitoring as well. So we go into each job that we back up for our clients and actually take a look and make sure that, hey, if there's any warnings, if there's any errors, we work through those errors, whether it's working with Veeam, whether that's working with our clients directly because there's a problem on their actual environment to get resolved, whatever that might be, we actually remediate those failures as needed. We do provide a daily report. Veeam does that, so we send that to our clients so that way they know that, hey, you know what, there's a warning or there's an error. If so, we open a proactive ticket for them so they know, but in most cases it'll show at least that, hey, everything was successful and all your backups have run properly. The last piece of that is we certainly provide the restores as well. So if there's ever a need for a restore, All our clients have to do is simply send an email to our support team or place a phone call to us, and we will have that done typically within an hour. At the same time, we also do understand that, as Tim mentioned, the Murphy's Law is that usually when something happens, it happens to a CEO or something, and they come running down and, hey, I deleted this email and need it back immediately. So sometimes an hour is much too long to wait, so we actually also provide restore access to our clients. So we provide a little site that they can get into and actually perform the restores within the Veeam console. The third part of this, and obviously one of the most important parts, is making sure that we have a copy off-site for you, right? So as Tim went over those 3-2-1 rules, the one there is making sure we've got a copy off-site. So what we do is, I previously mentioned our Midwestern data centers. We have 3 of those. We will send an off-site copy to one of those data centers. That way we make sure that your data is safe and secure elsewhere. If something happens to the local appliance, or your main site is gone and the local appliance and the production data is gone, then we can still pull that back down from the cloud repository in one of our data centers. So basically those are sent nightly. It's simply a backup copy job that we create that basically sends that over to one of those data centers. And obviously we can perform restores if, again, something were to happen to a local backup job that it failed. We can then make sure we pull it down from the cloud as well. Just as a note, that little bubble there that you see is the internet. That is actually sent over an AES 256 SSL encrypted line, so that way you don't have to worry about your data. Your data is protected. So that is kind of the flagship there. As we talk about some of the features and benefits, I went over them a little bit, but part of it is providing that full backup process management, right? So doing the day-to-day work. So in most cases, you should probably be spending, I would say, roughly about an hour or 2, possibly even 2, on your backups, to making sure the jobs ran properly, to fixing any errors that have come up, whether you have to place a phone call to Veeam, whatever that might be, to making sure that's running properly. We're taking care of all of that for you. The other piece is we're shifting a lot of the CapEx to OpEx. So we know in today's world that IT is always being pressured for their budgets. So what this allows us to do, instead of having to spend thousands or even hundreds of thousands of dollars on various equipment, whether that's another SAN or even a secondary data center, what this allows you to do is basically offload that for a smaller monthly fee, and we take that for you. The other piece is obviously making sure that we're meeting the best practice methodology. So we talked about the local backups being there for the faster restores. We talked about the off-site storage if something happens disaster-wise that we can pull that back down from. So again, we're there to meet that 3-2-1 backup compliance. And the last piece is we have really simple pricing for this. So there are one-time setup and seeding fees. We want to make sure that we don't send your initial backup, if it's terabytes and terabytes of data, over an internet line. So we will basically send seeding devices, and then we do the incrementals from there. And then there's, as we kind of discussed, there's the 3-pronged approach. There's a monthly appliance management and storage fee pricing as well. So we try to keep this as simple as possible for everyone. So that's the managed backup piece, right? So that's for the people that, hey, you know what, I don't want to deal with this anymore. I'd like someone else to take this on for me because I've got bigger fish to fry. Well, we also have clients that still want to manage that. Maybe they have a dedicated backup team and they have someone that currently does that today, and they already have their Veeam licensing, so they would like to keep continuing to do that. Not a problem at all. That's where we offer the Veeam Cloud Connect backup. And really what this does is it's kind of that third leg of what I just explained. So you've got your customer premises there on the left-hand side, and then obviously we can send that backup copy job. So the backup jobs that you have today, we create a very simple backup copy job. That's all done within your Veeam console, and you manage the entire process. So you send that over, again, that SSL connection there into one of ISG's data centers, and then basically you're able to do any restores that you would need through your Veeam console. You control the entire process as far as whether or not the data is encrypted. You control whether or not you can use things like WAN acceleration, which is a feature of Veeam that basically allows you to use less bandwidth and send the backup over much faster. So all of that's controlled within your Veeam console. We're there as a offsite repository. The nice part about ISG, though, is that while we're not providing any of the day-to-day backup management that you would see here, where we're a little different than some of the other probably Cloud Connect providers is that since we do offer our managed offering, we actually have a team of people dedicated to backups that are working in Veeam every day. So if you run into an issue, we are able to support you in that. So again, talking about some of the benefits there, again, we're shifting more CapEx to OpEx because you don't have to buy that secondary SAN or second data center. We're providing that for you. You're actually using the Veeam software you already have today. So as long as you have version 8 or higher, which as Tim mentioned, I think it's 90+% of Veeam customers upgrade within 90 days because they do make it very simple for Veeam to upgrade from version to version. And this allows for that best practice methodology. So for, again, if you're working through, whether it's tapes or things like that, and you'd like to have a more efficient way of doing that, the Cloud Connect backup is a very nice way to do that. So we talked about backup, both managed and unmanaged, and that works great for things like CryptoLocker or any sort of other type of ransomware. But we also want to talk about replication for those workloads that are very critical that maybe we have to have up and running faster than we can restore an entire environment or whatever that might be. So we have clients that will do both, right? So as we talk about replication, it's failover protection for mission critical workloads. And the reason that we say that is because I will have clients that will say, hey, I want to replicate everything, I'm backing everything up, so let's replicate it all. And really what we try to do is kind of tier out applications. We try to look at what the recovery point objective is, what the recovery time objective is of each of the applications and say, okay, well maybe we only need to replicate half of your servers and applications, right? Because the other ones are for archival purposes or they're just not accessed very often. So in those cases, we would just need a backup for those. It is self-service, similar to what the Cloud Connect backup was that I just explained, so you're controlling the process yourself. ISG is there as a repository and providing the infrastructure for you, but you manage when that failover occurs and what is failing over. Still leverages your existing Veeam, so as we talked about before with the Cloud Connect backup, as long as you had version 8 or higher, this actually uses Veeam version 9 update 1 or higher. Again, we talk about that operational cost model, trying to get away from the CapEx expenses, the larger expenses, and more to a manageable monthly number. And then, again, simple pricing structure. And there's also no VPN required within the Cloud Connect replication. So there are times where you would need that if there's a full failure and your entire site is gone. But if we're failing over one or even all of the environment, but you still have access to your Veeam console, then Veeam actually has what they call a network extension appliance that handles all the connectivity in the background. So it's very slick of how Veeam's designed this. So let's take a little picture at this and see kind of how this works. You'll notice on the left side there, it's very similar to what we saw in the backup, but the difference is on the right side, instead of just being the cloud backup repository, we actually have a virtual environment for our clients there. So what we do is we spin up a virtual data center in our VMware environment for our clients. So that way we will basically get the specs ahead of time to say, hey, we've got, 10 VMs with 4 cores and 16 gig of RAM each, so we'll basically spin up an environment that allows our clients in a passive mode to say, hey, you know what, I've got a problem with my Exchange server, I need to fail over to the ISG cloud. That VM is kind of sitting there in a passive mode, and through the Veeam console, you can spin that up with a matter of minutes, so that way it is up and running in our cloud. Again, it's customer configured, so you guys are actually configuring the replication process. You're able to do all of the partial failovers and actually a full failover as long as you have your Veeam console. The caveat to this is if there's an actual disaster where you no longer have access to your main site or your Veeam console, that's when ISG would actually step in and help. So part of what we'll do is we would actually come in, spin up your virtual data center for you, make sure that those replications are connected to the VMs, and then that's where we talk about connectivity as well. So we've got many clients that will have either a secondary site where we'll set up a site-to-site VPN tunnel, or they may have everybody working from laptops, and we talk about setting up SSL client-side VPN so that way they can access all of the data from home or wherever they might be. Again, some of the benefits here, it's using the Veeam software you already have. We talked about version 9 update 1. You're able to control the process, whether that be a partial failover or a full failover. Again, as long as it doesn't, as long as you still have access to the Veeam console. The full failover, as far as assistance with ISG, that's when our teams get involved. There are additional disaster declaration fees and hourly fees, and the reason I bring that up is because I normally point out to our clients that in the event of a disaster, we typically have them look through things like their insurance policies, because in most cases, the one-time fees that you would incur from that are part of what is part of your insurance plan. So always good to take a look at those when you're reviewing kind of your DR plans and your business continuity plans to see what insurance provides as far as coverage. As we dive into that assisted failover a little more, again, this is when your Veeam console's gone, so if you have damaged your facility or a long-term power failure, that's when we would step in, take care of the replication into vCloud Director. Tim actually mentioned in version 10, you can replicate directly into vCloud Director, which is a very nice piece because it saves some manual effort there, reducing the actual RTO, the recovery time objective, which is how quickly we get you back up. We power them up, and then we help you connect to them. Talked about the pricing a little bit already with the disaster declaration fee and then any hourly charges for engineering time. But the things to know are in order to fail back to a production environment, there's a kind of mini migration that happens. We also have some customers that say, you know what, I just want to stay in the cloud at this point, or hey, we're going to keep some in the cloud and move some back. So we kind of consult with our clients on that to figure out what works best for their particular situation. We also have this note in here about requiring DRP consideration, so who will have access to the replication environment. And the reason we bring that up is because this is where that connectivity comes in I was just talking about. So there are a lot of clients or a lot of companies out there that will talk to you about, hey, we've got your data replicated into our environment, but the big piece is, you know, who's going to access that? How are they going to access it and from where? And that's why we try to have that conversation around the connectivity piece, whether that's the site-to-site or SSL client-side VPN tunnels. So talking just about a general business continuity summary here, again, as I mentioned, we want to back everything up, right? Because there's very little data that we wouldn't at least want to be able to get in case something happened. Like we said, if that's a crypto locker, if it's a natural disaster of some sort, or as we saw on the previous slide, one of the most common things is human interaction causing those issues. So we want to back everything up, but we want to replicate the critical, what we call HA, higher availability workloads. So again, those are things like Exchange or ERP, billing systems, whatever that might be. And that's how we kind of tier those out. For full business continuity, actually ISG, our professional services team, we actually put together DR runbooks for people. They'll actually go through and kind of step through each of the steps and who's responsible for what. A lot of times our clients will have to present these DR plans to their boards. They're part of their larger business continuity plans, and so we're able to help provide those to our clients so that way they're able to then present to various boards. So we'll take a second to talk about resources and promotions. So a couple of resources that we have for you guys. One is an ebook from ISG called Debunking Disaster. So again, how to establish a disaster recovery plan that works. So kind of takes and walks you through a little bit of that process. Another one is provided by Veeam, and that's Disaster Recovery as a Service for Dummies. If you guys would like either of these resources, all you need to do is comment in the chat and say, hey, can you guys go ahead and send those over to me, and we'll get those provided to you. And now I'm going to turn over to Tim, and he's going to talk a little bit about the promotions that are currently out there.
Thanks, Jesse. So we've got two promotions we wanted to tell you about. First of all is the $1,000 in free cloud services. It's a combination of ISG and Veeam. So if you sign up for Cloud Connect services, or you expand your existing Cloud Connect services, you can receive up to $1,000 of free services for your first 6 months of service. And so for more details on that, please, again, either reply in the chat session or get in touch with either Veeam or ISG, and we can give you the details of that. The other one is our new agents for virtual, physical, and cloud, the Veeam agents. So historically, Veeam focused on backing up virtual machines, whether it be VMware or Hyper-V. Now, most recently, we have agents for Windows and agents for Linux, so that we can back up your bare metal physical servers. We can back up hypervisors other than VMware and Hyper-V, such as KVM, Citrix, Nutanix, and others. And we can back up VMs in the cloud. So if you have servers in Azure or AWS or another cloud vendor, we can back those up and protect those with our agent. And we have a promotion going on right now where those agent licenses are free until January of 2018. So through the rest of this year, those agents are free. So if you're interested in getting those agents, just again, let us know, and we can sign you up for that promotion and get you those agents.